Behind Morris Auto Salvage, where rust meets hope, lives a man the world forgot. Tom Walker's calloused hands tell a story of better days, his tent barely visible among towering stacks of abandoned cars. But tonight, those hands will change two lives forever. As the sun sets over the scrapyard, he discovers a teenage girl in a wheelchair, tears streaming down her face beside her broken car, a modified vintage Mustang that was supposed to be her bridge to independence. With nothing but worn tools and unwavering determination, Tom works through the night, asking for nothing in return. But what he doesn't know is that someone is watching. Could a single act of kindness rewrite the story of a man who lost everything? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Tom Walker's morning ritual hadn't changed in 3 years. As dawn broke over Morris Auto Salvage, he emerged from his weathered tent, the December frost crackling beneath his boots. His breath formed clouds in the crisp air as he made his way to the small propane heater that served as both his kitchen and his comfort. The socket wrench set lay beside him, meticulously cleaned and arranged despite its age. Each tool bore the worn patina of decades of use, the chrome long since dulled to a soft gray that matched the gathering clouds above. He'd sold everything else, but these tools, they were an extension of his hands, a reminder of who he used to be. Old Morris watched from his office window as Tom began his daily routine. The elderly salvage yard owner had given Tom permission to stay 3 years ago, when he'd found him sleeping in an abandoned Chevy. "Just until you get back on your feet," Morris had said. They both knew those words had evolved from temporary comfort to permanent arrangement. Tom pulled the wrinkled photograph from his jacket pocket, a ritual as consistent as his morning coffee. Emily's smile beamed back at him, their daughter Jenny perched on her shoulders at Disney World. The edges were worn smooth from countless touches, the colors fading like his memories of that happier time. Master Mechanic opens, downtown's premiere. European Auto Service, the newspaper had proclaimed. Tom remembered that day clearly, the ribbon cutting, Emily's proud smile, Jenny's excited chatter about helping in the shop someday. He'd built that business from nothing, turning his natural talent with engines into a thriving enterprise. European cars were his specialty. The rich and powerful of the city trusted no one else with their precious vehicles. Then came Emily's diagnosis: cancer, aggressive, the kind that didn't care about savings accounts or business success. They fought it with everything they had, experimental treatments, specialists, whatever it took. Tom sold the business, cashed in their retirement, mortgaged everything, but cancer was a race they couldn't win. Jenny tried to help after Emily passed, but at 19, she had her own dreams to chase. College in California, a future in environmental engineering. Tom insisted she go, promised he would be fine. The house went first, then the car. The bottle became his closest friend, until even that betrayed him. Morris's voice cut through his. "Memories? Got some transmissions need pulling from the new arrivals." The old man's gruff kindness hadn't changed since day one. He paid Tom under the table for odd jobs, enough for food and the occasional new tarp when the old one leaked. "Thanks, Morris." Tom tucked the photo away carefully. His hands might be calloused and stained with grease, but they still knew their purpose. In the yard, surrounded by broken things, he could pretend he was still fixing problems instead of running from them. A text message from Jenny lit up his old flip phone, the one luxury he maintained to keep in touch. "Love you, Dad. Hope you're doing better." He stared at the screen until it went dark, the words he couldn't bring himself to type hanging in the air. "I'm sorry I let you down." The morning wore on as Tom methodically dismantled engines, his expertise evident in every precise movement. The rich people who'd once trusted him with their Mercedes and BMWs wouldn't recognize him now. Beard greyed and untrimmed, clothes well worn but clean thanks to Morris's workshop sink. But the machines, they didn't care about appearances. They spoke the same language they always had, and Tom's hands still knew every dialect. Some nights, when the temperature dropped and his tent couldn't keep out the cold, Tom would dream of his old garage. The familiar smell of leather and motor, oil, the sound of European engines purring to life under his care. He'd wake to the reality of canvas walls and the distant highway's hum, but his hands would be twitching. Going through the motions of repairs he could perform blindfolded. Morris had offered him the workshop's backroom once, but Tom declined. He'd learned the hard way that comfort could be a trap, that having things meant having things to lose. Better to stay liquid, mobile, ready to move on when the past caught up or the future demanded change. Besides, out here among the rusted hulks and broken dreams, he felt at home. Every car in the yard had a story of accidents, neglect, bad luck, or simple time taking its toll. Tom understood their language, the silent testimony of metal and mechanics that spoke of better days and sudden endings. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the yard, Tom finished the transmission job and began his usual rounds. He checked his familiar landmarks, the stack of Volkswagen Beetles that marked the yard's eastern border, the towering crane that stood sentinel over the compact zone, the winding paths between American muscle cars that led to his hidden camp. The socket wrench set waited for him, its worn case a testament to countless repairs and restorations. These tools had built his first business, had nearly saved his world, and now they gave him purpose in this purgatory of parts and pieces. Every socket, every wrench was a letter in the alphabet of his craft, spelling out stories of redemption. In rust and chrome, tomorrow would be the same, and the day after that. But for now, as the security lights flickered to life and cast their harsh glow over the yard, Tom Walker took comfort in the simplicity of his existence. He was like these cars around him, maybe a little broken, definitely showing wear, but still holding value for those who knew where to look. The distant sound of an engine caught his attention, unusual for this time of evening. Morris had gone home hours ago, and the yard was officially closed. Tom rose from his camp chair, his mechanic's instinct already analyzing the sound. Something classic, American-made. But the timing was off. The engine was struggling. He had no way of knowing that this particular engine's complaint would change everything. That tomorrow, his carefully ordered world of rust and routine would be turned upside down. That sometimes the best repairs start with something breaking down completely. The 1967 Mustang Fastback rolled into view, its custom vintage burgundy paint catching the last rays of sunset. Even from a distance, Tom could tell this wasn't any ordinary restoration. The modifications were subtle but significant. The slightly wider doors, the reinforced frame, the custom-engineered running boards that weren't original to any Mustang he'd ever seen. Behind the wheel sat a teenage girl, her silhouette barely visible through the tinted windows. The car limped forward, its engine protesting with each revolution. Tom recognized the sound, timing belt on its last legs, probably some vacuum issues too. The kind of problems that could strand a driver in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. The Mustang managed a few more feet before surrendering completely, coming to rest near the yard's chain-link fence. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the driver's door opened, revealing a sophisticated mechanical arm that extended smoothly outward, supporting a lightweight carbon fiber wheelchair as it descended to the ground. Sarah Matthews had spent countless hours imagining this moment. Differently, in her dreams, she always pulled up to her high school graduation in this car, demonstrating the independence she'd fought so hard to achieve. The Mustang was more than transportation. It was freedom, carefully engineered around the realities of her life with cerebral palsy. Her father had started the project before the divorce, back when promises were still kept and dreams seemed within reach. "We'll build it together," he'd said, teaching her about engines from her wheelchair in his home garage. "This car will be your wings." But like so many other promises, This one faded when he moved to Chicago with his new family, leaving behind a half-finished project and a daughter who'd learned too early that some dreams come with an expiration date. Catherine Matthews watched from her parked Tesla, far enough away to remain unnoticed, but close enough to intervene if necessary. As CEO of Matthews Innovative Technologies, she could have bought her daughter any adapted vehicle on the market. But she understood Sarah's attachment to the Mustang. It represented everything her daughter wanted to prove to the world. Sarah wiped away tears of frustration as she maneuvered her wheelchair through the gravel. At 17, she'd already mastered the art of navigating a world that wasn't designed for her. The wheelchair responded to her practiced touch, its motorized assists compensating for the limitations of her hands. She'd insisted on reaching the driver's seat herself, engineers adapting the car's systems to work with her specific capabilities. The modifications were a marvel of modern engineering, merged with classic American muscle. The steering wheel could be controlled with minimal hand strength, the pedals replaced with electronic controls that responded to the slightest touch. Every system had a backup, each control carefully calibrated to her needs. Until tonight, when everything decided to fail at once. Tom watched the girl's determined struggle with the recognition of someone who knew about pride and its price. Her wheelchair was a high-tech piece of equipment that probably cost more than most cars in the yard, but it was the way she handled it, with the confident familiarity of someone who refused to be defined by their circumstances, that caught his attention. The Mustang's engine ticked as it cooled, each metallic ping a reminder of interrupted dreams. Sarah reached out to touch the car's hood, her fingers tracing the contours of the machine that had become an extension of her hopes. Her mother had warned her about taking the car out before the final safety checks were complete. But tonight was supposed to be her private victory lap, a rehearsal for graduation day. Timing belt? Tom's voice was gentle, pitched to avoid startling her. He'd emerged from between the stacked cars, keeping his distance to avoid appearing threatening. Sounds like it might have slipped. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes, instinctively, straightening in her wheelchair. You know Mustangs? The question carried equal parts hope and skepticism. She'd met plenty of mechanics who claimed expertise, but backed away when confronted with her car's modifications. Worked on a few. Tom's understatement was deliberate, his attention focused on the car rather than her tears. He understood the language of machines and dignity. Mind if I take a look? Catherine's hand tightened on her phone, ready to make a call that would have a fleet of specialized mechanics on site within the hour. But something made her pause. Perhaps the careful way the stranger maintained a respectful distance, or the professional assessment in his voice as he discussed the engine with her daughter. Sarah hesitated only briefly before nodding. Be careful with the hood release, she advised. It's been modified for easier access, but sometimes it sticks. Tom's practiced eye took in the engineering as he raised the hood. The engine bay told a story of meticulous planning and professional modification. Someone had put serious thought into making this car both accessible and safe. But even the best plans couldn't prevent normal wear and tear. Your timing belt's definitely shot, he confirmed, but his attention had caught on something else. But that's not your only problem. See this vacuum line here? It's perished. And these connections, they're not seated properly. Probably came loose over time, causing your engine to run rough even before the belt gave up. Sarah wheeled closer, her interest overcoming her initial caution. Can it be fixed? The question carried the weight of dreams that refused to die. Tom straightened up, unconsciously wiping his hands on his worn jeans. Tonight, if you want. I've got the tools, and Morris keeps a pretty good inventory of parts. He paused, choosing his words carefully. No charge. Sometimes things just need a little help getting back on track. In her Tesla, Catherine Matthews made a decision. She opened her laptop, connected to her company's secure network, and began a search. Within minutes, she had Tom Walker's complete history on her screen, his former business, his achievements, his losses. The man who had once been Dallas's most respected European car mechanic was about to spend the night repairing her daughter's American classic. She settled back to watch, her CEO's instincts telling her that sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as broken-down cars and chance encounters in salvage yards. Under the harsh glow of work lights, Tom's world narrowed to the Mustang's engine bay. His socket wrench set lay open on the magnetic tray he'd positioned near Sarah's wheelchair, allowing her to watch each step of the repair. The evening air had grown colder, but neither of them seemed to notice, both absorbed in the mechanical puzzle before them. "Hand me that 10mm socket?" Tom asked, treating Sarah as a fellow mechanic rather than a helpless bystander. She navigated her wheelchair with precision, using her adapted grabbing tool to select the correct socket. The simple task carried the weight of dignity, someone finally seeing her capabilities before her disability. "My dad used to let me help." "Like this?" she said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. Before he decided fixing cars with his disabled daughter wasn't part of his new life's image. She passed the socket to Tom with a smooth motion that spoke of practiced determination. Tom took the tool, his weathered hands gentle despite their strength. "His loss," he replied simply, the words carrying the weight of someone who understood both sides of abandonment. This kind of engineering, making something classic work in a new way that takes real vision, you've got that vision. The Mustang's modifications told their own story under his inspection. Every adaptation had been professionally designed, but Tom could see the places where theory met reality, where Sarah's actual needs had refined the original plans. The hand controls were elegantly integrated into the classic interior, the wheelchair loading system, a marvel of modern engineering married to vintage aesthetics. The company that did the modifications, Tom mentioned casually, testing the belt. Tension. They really knew their stuff. Don't see work this clean very often. Sarah's laugh held a hint of pride. Mum's company, actually. Matthew's Innovative Technologies. She had her best engineers work on it after Dad left. Said if he couldn't keep his promises, she'd make sure I kept my dreams. Tom's hands stilled for just a moment. Matthew's Innovative Technologies was a major player in adaptive technology development. He'd read about their breakthroughs even during his darkest days, when engineering journals were his only connection to his former life. The woman watching from the Tesla suddenly made more sense. Catherine observed the scene through her car's windshield, her tablet forgotten in her lap. She'd expected to see competence from Tom Walker. His background had promised that much. What she hadn't expected was the natural way he engaged with Sarah, the careful respect that acknowledged her daughter's intelligence and passion for mechanics. The timing belt replacement was straightforward enough, but Tom took extra time to explain. Each step, answering Sarah's questions with the patience of a born teacher. He showed her how to identify wear patterns, what sounds to listen for, the small preventive measures that could avoid future breakdowns. "See this vacuum line?" He pointed with his flashlight. "It's not just about replacing it. You need to understand why it failed. The heat shield was rubbing here, subtle, but enough to cause wear over time. We'll adjust that while we're in here." Sarah leaned forward in her wheelchair, her eyes bright with interest. "Like a chain reaction? One small problem leading to bigger ones?" "Exactly." Tom nodded approvingly. "Cars are like that. Life too. Sometimes small problems don't stay small if you ignore them." He caught himself, realizing how that might sound coming from a homeless mechanic, but Sarah was nodding thoughtfully. "That's what Mom always says about adaptive design," she shared. "You have to think 3 steps ahead, because one limitation can cascade into a whole series of challenges if you don't plan for it." The repair progressed steadily, Tom's expertise evident in every movement. He didn't just fix what was broken, he checked adjacent systems, made small adjustments, turned a breakdown into a thorough service. His hands moved with the confidence of muscle memory, even as his mind processed the sophisticated modifications. Catherine found herself taking notes on her tablet, professional interest mixing with personal observation. The way Tom adapted his teaching style to Sarah's physical capabilities, the respect he showed for both the classic car and its modern modifications. These weren't just the actions of a skilled mechanic. This was someone who understood the deeper purpose of engineering, making dreams accessible. As midnight approached, Tom closed the hood with a gentle click. "Moment of truth," he said, stepping back to give Sarah clear access to the driver's door. "Would you like to start her up?" Sarah's wheelchair hummed as she positioned herself perfectly for the transfer. The loading system engaged smoothly, lifting her into the driver's seat with practiced precision. Tom watched with professional appreciation as she settled behind the wheel, her hands finding their familiar positions on the adapted controls. The Mustang's engine turned over instantly, settling into a smooth idle, that saying of perfect timing and restored vacuum. Sarah's smile lit up the night, her hands running over the steering wheel in a gesture of reunion. The car wasn't just running, it was running better than before. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reluctantly reaching for her purse. "Mom left me her credit card for emergencies." Tom shook his head, already packing away his tools. "No charge. Just promise you'll keep an eye on those vacuum lines, and maybe stop by if you hear anything that doesn't sound right." He paused, then added with careful casualness, "It's good to see a classic car being used the way it should be, making someone's dreams possible." In her Tesla, Catherine Matthews made another decision. Her company had been developing a new division, focused on adaptive classic car modifications, a niche market with growing demand. They had the engineering talent, but lacked someone who truly understood both the mechanical heritage and the human element. She watched as Tom did a final walk-around of the Mustang, checking tire pressures and fluid levels without being asked. Sarah's delight in her restored car was obvious, but it was Tom's quiet competence and underlying kindness that had Catherine reaching for her phone. Tomorrow, she decided, would be an interesting day for everyone involved. Sometimes the best innovations came from unexpected intersections, like a homeless master mechanic and a teenager who refused to let anything stand between her and her dreams. The night deepened around Morris Auto Salvage as Tom continued his work on the Mustang. Sarah had dozed off in her wheelchair, wrapped in a thick blanket he'd retrieved from his tent, refusing to leave until the job was done. Her quiet presence stirred memories he usually kept carefully locked away. "Always check your work twice, Jenny girl," he whispered to himself, an echo of words spoken a lifetime ago in a spotless garage across town. His daughter had been 12 then, perched on a rolling stool beside him as he serviced a client's Ferrari, her eyes bright with the same mechanical curiosity he'd seen in Sarah tonight. The shop manual for the Mustang's adaptive systems lay open on his workbench, its pages illuminated by the workshop's fluorescent lights. Modern engineering merged with classic design in ways that would have seemed impossible during his heyday. Tom found himself admiring the elegance of the solutions. Each modification preserved the car's spirit while making it accessible to Sarah's unique needs. "Dad used to say every car has a personality," Sarah commented softly, startling him. He hadn't realized she was awake. "He said you have to listen to them, learn their language." Tom nodded, careful to keep his hands steady as he adjusted the new timing belt. He was right about that. Cars do talk to us through their vibrations, their sounds, even their silences. He paused, remembering similar conversations with Jenny. "My daughter used to say each engine had its own song." "Where is she now?" Sarah asked, her question carrying the gentle weight of someone who understood complicated family stories. "California, environmental engineering," pride mixed with regret in his voice. "She's doing important work, developing sustainable transportation systems." He didn't mention the unanswered texts, the carefully worded emails that never quite bridged the gap between them. The Mustang's engine bay held his attention as he worked, but his mind wandered through the years. He remembered Jenny's first successful repair, a simple oil change that she'd completed almost entirely on her own. The pride in her eyes had mirrored Emily's, both of them believing in the future he'd promised them. Sarah watched him with quiet understanding. "Sometimes I think the hardest part isn't the disability," she said, gesturing to her wheelchair. "It's the way people's expectations of you change. They see the chair first, forget there's a person who dreams about more than just getting by." Her words hit close to home. Tom thought about the way people's eyes slid past him now, how his expertise had become invisible behind his circumstances. "People see what they expect to see," he agreed, reaching for a torque wrench. "But machines, they don't care about appearances. They just respond to knowledge and respect." The night air grew colder, but the workshop stayed warm, filled with the sounds of careful work and comfortable silence. Tom found himself explaining each step as he progressed, just as he used to do with Jenny. Sarah absorbed the information with quick intelligence, asking questions that showed genuine understanding. "The adaptive controls are amazing," he commented, studying the integration of modern electronics with the classic mechanical systems. "The way they've maintained the original feel while making everything accessible, it's brilliant engineering." Sarah smiled proudly. "Mum's engineers spent months getting it right. She wouldn't settle for anything less than perfect. Said if I was going to have a dream car, it should be exactly what I dreamed of." Tom thought about Catherine Matthews, still, watching from her Tesla. He'd caught glimpses of her throughout the night, her silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of her laptop. There was something admirable about a CEO who would spend hours in a salvage yard, ensuring her daughter's safety while respecting her independence. The work continued, each repair bringing the Mustang closer to its full potential. Tom found himself appreciating the car in a new way, not just as a classic vehicle, but as a bridge between ability and desire, a machine that refused to accept limitations. "You know," he said, carefully testing the throttle response, "when I had my shop, I thought I understood what cars meant to people. Status symbols, investments, toys for the wealthy." He adjusted a sensor with practiced precision. "But this, making dreams accessible, giving someone their independence, this is what engineering should be about." Sarah's wheelchair hummed softly as she moved closer to watch him work. "That's what Mom always says. Technology isn't about showing off what we can build. It's about breaking down barriers, making the impossible possible." The words stirred something in Tom's memory. An article he'd read about Matthews Innovative Technologies' mission statement. The company wasn't just successful, it was revolutionary in its approach to adaptive technology. He'd followed their developments even during his darkest days, admiring their commitment to practical innovation. As the night wore on, Tom found himself sharing more stories about Jenny, about the dreams they'd had for their family business. Sarah listened with genuine interest, offering her own tales of determination and adaptation. Between them, the Mustang gradually transformed from a stranded vehicle to a testament of persistence. "Almost done," Tom announced around 3 in the morning, his hands steady despite the late hour. "Just need to run through the final checks." He began a methodical testing sequence, each step ensuring that the car's unique systems worked in perfect harmony. The workshop had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where past and present merged in the service of future dreams. Tomorrow, Tom would return to his tent, to the careful routine of survival. But for now, surrounded by tools and trust, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the simple satisfaction of using his skills to make someone's world a little better. Catherine's presence remained constant, a reminder that this night might lead to changes he couldn't yet imagine. But for now, there was just the work, the quiet conversation, and the gradual restoration of both a car and a sense of purpose. Dawn painted the sky in gentle brushstrokes of pink and gold as Tom made his final adjustments to the Mustang. The first birds had begun their morning chorus, their songs mixing with the smooth idle of the restored engine. Sarah had finally surrendered. To sleep in her wheelchair, the blanket rising and falling with her peaceful breathing. That should do it, Tom murmured, more to himself than to the sleeping teenager. He closed the hood with a gentleness that spoke of respect, both for the machine and for Sarah's slumber. The Mustang gleamed in the early morning light, its burgundy paint catching the sun like a promise kept. Catherine emerged from her Tesla, her designer boots crunching softly on the gravel. Despite the all-night vigil, she carried herself with the poised confidence of someone accustomed to making million-dollar decisions before breakfast. She studied Tom with the careful attention of someone who had spent the night doing extensive research. "Mr. Walker," she said quietly, extending her hand, "I believe we should talk." Tom wiped his hands carefully on a shop rag, suddenly conscious of the stark contrast between them, her tailored business attire against his worn work clothes, her manicured nails against his oil-stained fingers. But when they shook hands, her grip was firm and professional, free from judgment. "The work you've done tonight," she continued, gesturing toward the Mustang, "it's impressive. Not just the mechanical repair, but your understanding of the adaptive systems. Most mechanics we've encountered either focus entirely on the classic aspects or get lost in the modifications." Tom glanced at Sarah, making sure their conversation wouldn't wake her. "It's good engineering," he replied simply. "Whoever designed these systems, they thought about the human element. Not just the mechanics of making it work, but how it would feel to use it every day." Catherine's smile held a hint of pride. That was the goal. "Though I must admit, finding someone who truly understands both sides of the equation has been challenging." She paused, studying him with the same attention she'd given his work. "Tell me, Mr. Walker, what do you know about Matthew's innovative technologies?" The question carried weight beyond simple curiosity. Tom chose his words carefully, aware that this conversation was more than casual dawn chat. "You're leaders in adaptive technology. I've followed your work for years, actually. Your recent developments in neural interface controls for mobility assistance, it's revolutionary stuff." Something shifted in Catherine's expression. Approval, perhaps, or confirmation of a hypothesis. "And yet you recognized areas for improvement in Sarah's car. I heard you explaining to her about the vacuum line routing, how it could be optimized for better reliability." "Just experience talking," Tom demurred, but Catherine held up a hand. "Experience is exactly what we need, Mr. Walker. My company excels at innovation, but sometimes we need someone who understands the practical realities of keeping these machines running. Someone who sees both the dream and the details needed to sustain it." The morning light strengthened, casting long shadows across the salvage yard. In the distance, early traffic hummed on the highway, the world beginning its daily rhythm. Tom felt the familiar urge to retreat to his tent, to the simple certainty of his routine. But Sarah stirred in her wheelchair, smiling in her sleep, and he remembered the look in her eyes when the engine had first roared back to life. "We're expanding our classic car adaptation program," Catherine continued, her tone shifting to one he recognized from his business days, the voice of someone making an offer. "There's a growing demand for what we did with Sarah's Mustang. Baby boomers who don't want to give up their dream cars just because mobility has become challenging. Young people who refuse to let disability define their automotive passions." Tom's hands found his socket wrench set, the familiar weight grounding him. "It's a good market to pursue," he agreed cautiously. "Lot of potential there. We have the technology, the resources, and the vision," Catherine said. "What we need is someone who understands both the soul of these classic cars and the importance of making them accessible. Someone who can bridge the gap between what was and what could be." The implications hung in the morning air. Tom looked around the salvage yard. His home for the past 3 years, his refuge, and his prison. Morris would be arriving soon, ready to start another day of pulling parts and preserving memories. "I appreciate the thought, Ms. Matthews, but—" "Catherine," she interrupted smoothly, "and before you decline, I want you to understand exactly what I'm offering. Not just a job, Mr. Walker. A chance to help people like Sarah keep their dreams within reach. An opportunity to take your experience, all of it, including the hard parts, and use it to make a real difference. Sarah began to stir, her wheelchair humming softly as she adjusted position. The sound seemed to remind Catherine of something. You know, when we first modified this car, our engineers focused on the technical challenges. But watching you work, last night, seeing how you understood both the mechanical needs and Sarah's personal connection to the car, that's the perspective we've been missing. The sun cleared the horizon, flooding the yard with golden light. Tom thought about Jenny, about the dreams they'd shared in their old garage. He thought about Sarah's determination, about the elegant engineering that had turned a classic Mustang into a chariot of independence. I don't even have a permanent address, he said finally, voicing the smallest of his doubts. Catherine's smile widened. That's the easiest problem to solve, Mr. Walker. The real question is, are you ready to build something new, not just engines and adaptations, but a future where expertise like yours helps keep dreams within reach for people who refuse to let circumstances define their limits? The Mustang ticked softly as it cooled, the sound like a clock marking the moment between past and possibility. In her wheelchair, Sarah opened her eyes to a new day, her dream car purring contentedly beside her, while Tom Walker stood at the crossroads of redemption and opportunity, his worn socket wrench set cradled in hands that had never forgotten their purpose. 24 hours after fixing Sarah's Mustang, Tom stood at the edge of Morris Auto Salvage, watching a Gulfstream G650 execute a perfect landing on the private airstrip that bordered the industrial district. The morning sun glinted off its polished fuselage, the Matthews Innovative Technologies logo clearly visible on the tail. Quite a change from last night's view, isn't it? Morris appeared beside him, his weathered face creased in a knowing smile. The old man had arrived at dawn to find Catherine's business card on his desk, along with a note explaining everything. Thought you might want these. He handed Tom a set of freshly laundered clothes, simple but new, purchased from the department store that had opened early at Catherine's request. Tom held the clothes awkwardly, their tags still attached. Morris, Save it, the older man interrupted gruffly, though his eyes were kind. 3 years watching you rebuild engines and rebuild yourself. About time someone noticed what I've been seeing all along. The Mustang's familiar rumble approached. Sarah at the wheel with Catherine beside her. The car moved with renewed confidence, every system working in perfect harmony. They'd spent the day testing it thoroughly, Sarah insisting that Tom experience firsthand how his repairs had improved the adaptive controls. Ready? Catherine called through the open window. Her power suit had been replaced by elegant casual wear, but she carried the same air of quiet authority. The board is waiting at headquarters. Tom glanced down at his current clothes, clean but worn, the uniform of a man who'd learned to live with less. I should change first. There's a full bathroom on the jet, Sarah offered, her eyes bright with excitement. Mum always says transformation starts with opportunity, but style helps seal the deal. The drive to the airstrip took less than 10 minutes, but for Tom, it felt like crossing decades. Each yard brought him further from the safe routine of the salvage yard towards something that looked suspiciously like a second chance. Catherine led them aboard the aircraft with practiced ease, while Sarah's wheelchair was secured in a specially modified section of the cabin. The interior spoke of subtle wealth, not ostentatious, but equipped with everything necessary for conducting business at 40,000 feet. The bathroom's through there, Catherine indicated. Take your time. We've got a 40-minute flight to headquarters, and I think you'll want to hear what I'm about to propose. In the jet's spacious bathroom, Tom faced himself in the mirror. The new clothes fit perfectly. Catherine's team had done their homework. Dark jeans, a crisp button-down shirt, and a casual blazer that somehow made him look both professional and approachable. He trimmed his beard, combed his hair, and for the first time in years recognized the man looking back at him. When he emerged, Sarah gave him a thumbs up. Now you look like the engineering genius Mom spent all night reading about. Tom settled into the leather seat across from Catherine as the jet taxied for takeoff. You did some research? Thoroughly, Catherine agreed, opening her laptop. Your patents from the early 2000s, particularly the one for electronic brake force distribution in modified classic cars. It was ahead of its time. We've been using similar principles in our adaptive vehicles. The jet lifted smoothly into the morning sky, banking toward the city center where Matthews Innovative Technologies headquarters dominated the skyline. Tom watched the salvage yard recede, Morris's figure still visible by the gate. Your old shop's reputation was impeccable, Catherine continued. Every high-end car collector in 3 states trusted you exclusively, but what really caught my attention was this. She turned the laptop, showing him a yellowed newspaper article. It featured a much younger Tom, standing beside a modified Ferrari designed for a client with partial paralysis. My first adaptive build, Tom said softly. The client said other shops told him to buy something modern, something already designed for his needs. But that Ferrari was his dream car. And you found a way to make it work, Catherine nodded. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. The classic car market is changing. Baby boomers are hitting an age where mobility is becoming a concern, but they don't want to give up their dream cars. Younger enthusiasts with disabilities are looking for ways to enter the classic car community. There's a massive untapped market. Here, Sarah wheeled closer, her enthusiasm evident. Show him the prototype designs, Mom. Catherine pulled up a series of 3D renderings. Classic cars reimagined with subtle but comprehensive modifications. Chevelle, Corvettes, even vintage Porsches, all adapted for various levels of mobility assistance. We have the engineering capability, Catherine explained. What we need is someone who understands both the soul of these machines and the human element of adaptation. Someone who can look at a 50-year-old car and see not just what it was, but what it could become, for someone who refuses to let circumstances define their dreams. The jet cruised at altitude now, the city spreading out below them like a map of possibilities. Tom studied the designs, his mind already seeing refinements, improvements, ways to make the systems more reliable and user-friendly. The position would be Director of Classic Car Adaptation Programs, Catherine continued. Full creative control over the technical aspects, with a team of engineers at your disposal. The salary is competitive, of course, and includes relocation, assistance, comprehensive benefits, and equity in the program's success. Tom thought about his socket wrench set, carefully packed in his bag below. Tools that had built his first business, that had nearly saved his world, that had kept him connected to his craft even in the darkest times. And if it doesn't work out, then you'll have tried, Sarah said simply. Isn't that better than wondering what might have been? Catherine smiled at her daughter's wisdom. We're not just offering you a job, Mr. Walker. We're offering you a chance to turn your experience, all of it, into something meaningful, to help people like Sarah keep their dreams within reach. The jet began its descent toward the Matthews. Innovative Technologies building, its glass towers reflecting the morning sun like a beacon. Tom watched as they approached, remembering another morning years ago when he'd cut the ribbon on his own shop. The dreams had been smaller then, but the hope had felt the same. The board is expecting us in 30 minutes, Catherine said softly. They've reviewed your history, professional and personal. They understand about Emily, about the choices you made trying to save her. What they want to know is, are you ready to build something new? The question hung in the pressurized cabin as the jet touched down on the corporate helipad, 30 stories above the city where Tom's story had once ended. But maybe, he realized, watching Sarah's excited face and Catherine's confident smile, that had just been Chapter 1. The Matthews Innovative Technologies boardroom occupied the entire 30th floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city below. Tom could see Morris Auto Salvage in the distance, a tiny island of rust and memories. amid the urban sprawl. The contrast wasn't lost on him as he stood before 12 of the most influential people in adaptive technology. "Mr. Walker," the board chairman began, his tone measured but not unkind, "we've reviewed your rather unique situation." He gestured to the folders before each board member, containing what Tom assumed was the story of his rise and fall. "Ms. Matthews makes a compelling case for your expertise, but we have some concerns." Catherine sat at the head of the table, radiating quiet confidence. Sarah had positioned her wheelchair near the window, her presence a reminder of why they were all here. The Mustang's keys rested on the polished mahogany table, a tangible example of Tom's work. "I understand your concerns," Tom replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "My circumstances for the past 3 years aren't exactly typical for a corporate director, a woman in her 60s. The head of research and development, according to her nameplate, leaned forward. "Actually, Mr. Walker, your recent circumstances are precisely what intrigue us. You maintained your skills, your professional standards, even while living in extraordinarily difficult conditions. That speaks to character." The chairman nodded slowly. "However, we need to address the elephant in the room, the closure of your previous business, the period following your wife's passing." He paused delicately. "How can we be confident those issues are behind you?" Tom felt the familiar tightening in his chest at the mention of Emily, but Sarah caught his eye and smiled encouragingly. He reached into his blazer pocket and withdrew a worn leather wallet, the one possession he'd never sold, never pawned. "I carry this with me," he said, opening it to reveal a carefully preserved photograph. "My wife Emily, our daughter Jenny, and me at the opening of my first shop." He placed it on the table. Next to it is a more recent photo, Jenny at her college graduation. "I couldn't attend, but she sent it anyway." The photos circulated among the board members. Tom continued, "I lost my way after Emily died, made choices born of grief and desperation, but even at my lowest, I never lost my understanding of what makes a great engineer, the ability to see potential where others see problems." Catherine stepped in smoothly. "Tom spent last night completely rebuilding the adaptive systems in Sarah's Mustang. The improvements he suggested to our current design are already being reviewed by our engineering team. They're calling them revolutionary." The head of R&D was studying Tom with increased interest. "The brake force distribution patent from 2002, that was yours, wasn't it? We've been working on something similar for our new line." "It could be adapted," Tom offered, warming to the technical discussion. "The principle was sound, but modern electronics would allow for much finer control, especially if you integrated it with your neural response systems." The conversation shifted, becoming more animated as Tom sketched modifications on the boardroom's digital display. His hands moved with certainty, decades of experience flowing through his fingers as he outlined improvements to their current designs. Sarah wheeled closer to the display. "See how he's repositioning the primary controls. That would make them more intuitive for someone with limited hand strength." The board members exchanged glances. The chairman cleared his throat. "Ms. Matthews mentioned a special project she envisions for your department. Something about classic car adaptations." Catherine stood, commanding the room's attention. "The market for adapted classic cars is virtually untapped. We have people with means who want to maintain their independence without sacrificing their automotive passions." Tom doesn't just understand the mechanics, he understands the human element, the dignity of independence. "It's not just about making old cars accessible," Tom added quietly. "It's about preserving dreams. Every classic car has a story, just like every person who wants to drive it. The challenge is finding where those stories intersect." The R&D director was nodding enthusiastically. "The technology we developed for Sarah's Mustang could be standardized, created as modular systems adaptable to various classic platforms." "Exactly," Tom agreed. "And with modern modeling software, we could pre-design solutions for popular classics. Make the dream achievable for more people." The chairman studied Tom thoughtfully. "You understand this position comes with considerable responsibility. A substantial team, significant resources. It's a far cry from a tent in a salvage yard." Tom finished with a slight smile. "Yes, sir, but leading a team, managing resources, that's not new to me. What's new is the scale of what we could achieve." Sarah had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "Show them the video, Mom." Catherine nodded and pulled up a security camera feed from the previous night. The boardroom watched in silence as Tom worked on the Mustang, explaining each step to Sarah, his expertise evident even in the grainy footage. "That's what we need," Catherine said simply. "Someone who sees both the technical challenge and the human story. Someone who understands that what we're really engineering is independence." The chairman looked around the table, reading the faces of his fellow board members. "I believe we've seen enough." He turned to Tom. "Mr. Walker, assuming you accept our offer, when could you start?" Tom thought about his socket wrench set, about Morris's knowing smile, about the long journey from success to failure and potentially back again. "I'd need a few days to—" He paused, realizing how little he actually had to sort out. "We'll have an apartment ready by this evening," Catherine interjected smoothly, "unless you'd prefer to review other options." The chairman raised an eyebrow. "You seem very confident in this decision, Catherine." "I am," she smiled. "Sometimes the best innovations come from unexpected places. Tom's experience, all of it, makes him uniquely qualified to understand both what we do and why we do it." Tom looked out the window again, at the city spread below them. Somewhere out there, Jenny was working on her own dreams of making transportation better for everyone. Maybe it was time for her father to do the same. "I can start tomorrow," he said finally, "after I say goodbye to Morris properly." The chairman stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to Matthews Innovative Technologies, Mr. Walker. Let's see what dreams we can help put back on the road." The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of Tom's new apartment, illuminating a space that still felt surreal. Catherine's team had furnished it simply but comfortably, a perfect blend of functionality and style. His socket, wrench set, cleaned and polished, sat on the kitchen counter like a bridge between his past and present. "Your team is waiting in the R&D lab," Catherine's text message read. "Sarah insisted on being there for your first morning. She says you'll need a test pilot for the classic car program." Tom adjusted his tie, another gift from Catherine's efficient staff, and studied his reflection. The man in the mirror looked more like his old self, but with new depths in his eyes that spoke of hard-won wisdom. His employee ID badge caught. The light, Thomas Walker, Director of Classic Car Adaptation Programs. The Matthews Innovative Technologies building lobbied hummed with morning energy. Engineers and designers moved purposefully through security checkpoints, laptops and coffee, cups in hand. Tom's badge granted him access to the secure elevator, its smooth ascent carrying him to the research and development floor. "There he is!" Sarah's voice greeted him as the doors opened. She wheeled forward, expertly navigating between workstations. "Mum said to show you around before the morning meeting. You've got to see what they're working on. It's amazing." Tied to R&D floor was a wonderland of innovation. Prototype mobility devices lined the walls, each representing a different approach to independence. Engineers huddled over sophisticated 3D modeling stations, while testing areas buzzed with the sound of motors and actuators. "This is your team," Sarah announced, leading him to a separate section of the floor. 6 engineers looked up from their workstations, their expressions curious but welcoming. The space was dominated by large screens displaying technical drawings of classic cars, each overlaid with adaptive modification designs. "I'm Lisa Chen." A woman in her 40s stepped forward, extending her hand. "Lead Engineering Project Manager. We've been reviewing your brake force distribution patent. Brilliant work, especially for the technology available back then." Tom shook her hand, noting the calluses that marked her as someone who understood both theory and practice. That system had potential, but it was limited by the electronics of the era. I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with current technology. The team gathered around as Sarah pulled up the latest designs for her Mustang's control systems. Tom already improved the vacuum routing, she explained proudly. Wait until you see his ideas for the hydraulic assist. For the next hour, Tom immersed himself in technical discussions with his team. Each engineer brought unique expertise: advanced electronics, material science, human factors engineering. But what impressed him most was their shared understanding that every technical solution needed to serve a human need. The challenge with classics, Tom explained, sketching on a digital whiteboard, is preserving the soul of the car while adding modern adaptability. These aren't just machines, they're memories, dreams, connections to special moments in people's lives. Lisa nodded enthusiastically. That's why your experience is so valuable. We can design perfect technical solutions, but you understand the intangible elements that make classic cars special. A gentle chime interrupted their discussion. That's your cue, Sarah grinned. Monthly all-hands meeting. Mom says you're expected to say a few words. The main conference room was packed with Matthew's Innovative Technologies staff. Catherine stood at the podium, discussing quarterly results and future initiatives. She smiled as Tom and Sarah entered, waving them to reserved seats in the front. And now, Catherine concluded, I'd like to introduce the newest member of our leadership team. Tom Walker joins us as Director of Classic Car Adaptation Programs, bringing decades of experience in both traditional mechanics and adaptive modifications. Tom rose, suddenly aware of hundreds of eyes upon him. He thought of Morris, probably starting his day at the salvage yard, of Jenny working on her environmental projects in California, of Emily who had always believed in his ability to make things better. Thank you, he began, his voice finding its strength. You know, for the past 3 years I've lived behind a salvage yard, surrounded by broken machines. But what I learned there, what I've always known, is that nothing is truly broken if you understand its purpose and have the will to restore it. The room was silent, attentive. Tom continued, every vehicle that comes through our program represents someone's dream of independence. Whether it's a baby boomer who's loved their Corvette for 40 years and isn't ready to give it up, or a young person with disabilities who refuses to let circumstances dictate their choices, our job is to make those dreams mechanically possible. He gestured to Sarah. Yesterday I was living in a tent. Today I'm standing here because this young lady's car broke down in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. But really, I'm here because Matthew's Innovative Technologies understands that engineering isn't just about solving technical problems. It's about expanding human possibilities. Catherine beamed from the podium as Tom went on to outline his vision for the classic car program. He spoke about modular adaptation systems, about preserving automotive heritage while embracing modern accessibility, about the growing market of enthusiasts who needed their passion for classics to coexist with their physical realities. After the meeting, Tom's team gathered in their lab space, energized by the morning's events. Lisa had already organized their first project review, with 3 potential client cases waiting for evaluation. Ready to get started? She asked, pulling up the first file, a 1965 Porsche 356 belonging to a client with progressive muscle weakness. Tom rolled up his sleeves, already seeing possibilities in the classic car's layout. His fingers found the familiar weight of a pencil, ready to sketch initial concepts. Around him, his team leaned in, eager to combine their technical expertise with his practical experience. Sarah watched from her wheelchair, her presence a reminder of why every calculation, every modification, every innovation mattered. You know, she said thoughtfully, last night I dreamed about taking my Mustang to graduation, but now I'm thinking bigger. Maybe we're going to help a lot of people's dreams find their way back to the road. Tom smiled, remembering Catherine's, Words about transformation and opportunity. Here, surrounded by technology and talent, his years of experience, both triumph and tragedy, had found their purpose. The director's office could wait. Right now, there were dreams to engineer. 3 weeks into his new role, Tom found himself working late in the R&D lab, surrounded by holographic projections of their first major project. The 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air floated in the air before him, its classic lines annotated with adaptive modification points. Catherine stood beside him, her heels discarded hours ago as they refined the design for their first high-profile client. "Senator Richardson's daughter deserves something special," Catherine mused, manipulating the 3D image to focus on the driver's area. "This car isn't just about mobility, it's going to be a statement about what's possible." The project had come to them through Sarah, who'd met Angela Richardson at a physical therapy session. The senator's daughter, paralyzed in a skiing accident, had been dreaming of her father's Bel Air since childhood. Now, with her wedding approaching, the senator wanted to surprise her with the ultimate gift, the ability to drive the family's cherished classic herself. The challenge is maintaining the original aesthetics while incorporating full adaptive controls, Tom explained, zooming in on the steering column. Everything needs to look period correct, but function with medical-grade reliability. Catherine watched him work, noting how naturally he moved between the high-tech modeling system and the traditional engineering principles. "You've adapted well to the new technology," she observed. "Lisa says you're already suggesting improvements to our design software." Tom smiled, remembering his first awkward days with the holographic interface. Good engineering is good engineering. Whether you're using a wrench or a neural interface, it's all about understanding the problem from the user's perspective. The lab was quiet at this hour, most of the team having gone home. Sarah had stayed late too, testing prototype controls in the simulator until Catherine insisted she get some rest. The teenager's enthusiasm for the project had become infectious, inspiring the entire team to push boundaries. "Watch this," Tom said, pulling up a new design overlay. "We've modified the original hydraulic system to work with a neural mechanical hybrid. All the controls look completely stock, but they'll respond to the slightest touch or even direct neural input if Angela's medical team approves." Catherine stepped closer, studying the elegant solution. "It's beautiful work, but what really impresses me is how you've maintained the car's soul. Every modification looks like it could have come from the factory." "That's the key," Tom agreed, his voice soft with understanding. "These cars, they're more than transportation. They're family histories, shared memories, dreams passed down through generations. Our job isn't just to make them accessible, it's to preserve their stories while writing new chapters." A notification popped up on Catherine's tablet. Another message from the senator's office requesting a project update. She'd been fielding calls all week, managing expectations while giving Tom's team space to innovate. "The senator's getting anxious," she admitted. "His daughter's wedding is in 4 months, and he wants to present the car at the rehearsal dinner. Are we going to make it?" Tom pulled up the project timeline, each phase carefully mapped out. "We'll make it. Lisa's team has already sourced the specialty materials, and I've got Morris tracking down original parts we can modify." He paused, then added, "It helps having a CEO who understands both the technical and human sides of what we're doing." Catherine smiled, remembering their first meeting in the salvage yard. Sometimes the best innovations come from unexpected connections. Speaking of which, Jenny called the office today. Tom's hand stilled over the holographic controls. "She did. She saw the press release about our classic car program, asked if the Tom Walker we hired was her father. She sounded hopeful." The 3D model of the Bel Air rotated slowly between them, its chrome trim catching the lab's overhead lights. Tom thought about the unanswered texts on his phone, the years of distance he'd created in his grief. "I wasn't ready before," he said quietly, "to talk to her, to be her father again. Felt like I'd lost the right." Catherine's hand found his shoulder, her touch professional but comforting. We all lose our way sometimes. It's finding the road back that matters. She gestured to the holographic car. Look what you've created here. A way to keep family traditions alive across generations. Maybe it's time to rebuild your own connections too. Their conversation was interrupted by the lab doors sliding open. Sarah wheeled in, still wearing her therapy clothes. I couldn't sleep, she announced. Had an idea about the throttle response curve for Angela's controls. Mind if I test it in the simulator? Catherine started to object, but Tom was already pulling up the simulator protocols. 10 minutes, he said, catching Catherine's eye with a smile. Sometimes the best ideas come at odd hours. As Sarah transferred into the simulator seat, Catherine watched Tom adjust the parameters with paternal care. In just 3 weeks, he'd become more than a department director. He was a mentor to Sarah, a respected leader to his team, and something else that Catherine wasn't quite ready to define. The throttle mapping needs to be progressive, Sarah called out, her hands on the simulator's controls. Angela's strength varies throughout the day. The car needs to adapt with her. Tom nodded, making adjustments. Like this, the simulator's engine sound changed subtly, becoming more responsive. Perfect. Sarah's face lit up. See, Mom, this is why we need test pilots. Catherine shook her head fondly. 10 minutes, you two. Then home. We have the donor car arriving tomorrow, and I need my chief engineer well rested. As she gathered her things to leave, Catherine paused at the door, watching Tom and Sarah fine-tune the control systems. 3 weeks ago, he'd been living in a tent. Now, he was leading cutting-edge adaptive technology development, rebuilding family connections, and helping others keep their dreams within reach. Tom, she called softly. He looked up from the simulator. Jenny's number is in your company phone when you're ready. She smiled. Sometimes the best restoration projects start with a simple hello. The Billionaire's holographic image cast a gentle glow over the lab, its classic lines merging with modern technology like past embracing future. Tomorrow, they would begin the physical transformation of Senator Richardson's car, turning family heritage into a bridge between generations. But tonight, in the quiet of the lab, other transformations were taking shape, ones measured not in mechanical tolerances, but in restored hopes and healing hearts. The article appeared in the business section of the Dallas Morning News, From Salvage Yard to Salvation. Matthews Innovative Technologies' newest director brings hope to classic car enthusiasts. Tom stared at his own image on the screen. A professional headshot taken for the company website, placed alongside a candid photo someone had captured of him working on Sarah's Mustang that first night. The comments section is overwhelmingly positive, Lisa reported, scrolling through her tablet during their morning meeting. Former clients from your old shop are coming forward, talking about your work from before. The classic car community is buzzing. Tom closed the browser window, uncomfortable with the attention, but Catherine, who had slipped quietly into the lab, had other ideas. This is good publicity for the program, she said, setting a coffee on his desk. Cream, no sugar, just as he'd mentioned once in passing. People connect with stories of redemption. The Billionaire project was proceeding on schedule, its stripped chassis waiting in the workshop below. Yet Tom couldn't shake the feeling that his past was catching up with him, for better or worse. Mr. Walker, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. There's a Mr. James Carlton on the line. Says he knows you from the Ferrari, Tom interrupted softly. The one we modified for his paralysis in '02. He took a deep breath. Put him through. Catherine moved to leave, but Tom gestured for her to stay. The call switched to speakerphone, filling the office with a familiar voice from his past. Tom Walker, you magnificent bastard. James Carlton's warm baritone carried 2 decades of memories. I always wondered where you disappeared to. Still driving that Ferrari you modified for me? Never found another mechanic who understood it. Like you did. Tom's tension eased slightly. James, good to hear your voice. How's the hand control system holding up? Like it was installed yesterday. But listen, I'm not calling just to reminisce. I'm on the board of the Classic Car Accessibility Foundation. We've been following what you're doing at Matthews. That Senator Richardson project, it's exactly the kind of thing we've been advocating. For years, Catherine leaned forward, her business instincts engaged. Tom could almost see the possibilities forming in her mind. We'd like you to speak at our annual conference, James continued. Share your vision for making classic cars accessible to everyone. There's a whole community out there waiting for someone to bridge the gap between preservation and adaptation. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Tom looked at Catherine, who nodded encouragingly. I appreciate the offer, James. But before you say no, James interrupted, remember what you told me when I thought I'd never drive again. The car doesn't care what works and what doesn't. It just wants to run. You gave me back my passion, Tom. There are others waiting for the same chance. After the call ended, Catherine stayed, watching Tom process the interaction. He's right, you know. Your story adds credibility to the program. People trust someone who's faced their own challenges. And what happens when they dig deeper? Tom asked quietly. The drinking after Emily died, the business collapse, the years lost to grief. Not exactly corporate director material. Actually, a new voice joined in as Sarah wheeled into the office. That's exactly what makes you perfect for this. She handed Tom a tablet open to a forum post. Look what Angela Richardson shared about her dad's project. The post was simple but powerful. For the first time since my accident, someone understood that adapting my dad's Bel Air wasn't just about mobility, it was about keeping our family's story alive. The engineer in charge knows what it means to lose something precious and find a way back. Sometimes the best solutions come from people who've had to rebuild themselves first. Catherine's hand found Tom's shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over the past weeks. Your experience gives you perspective others don't have. You understand that what we're really engineering here is hope. The lab beyond Tom's office was busy with activity. Through the glass walls, he could see Lisa's team working on the Bel Air's control systems, each component representing a perfect fusion of past and present. The car's story was evolving, just as his own had. There's something else, Catherine said carefully. Jenny saw the article. She's asked to attend the conference if you decide to speak. Says she'd like to hear about the work you're doing. Maybe share some ideas about combining adaptive technology with environmental sustainability. Tom's hands found the familiar comfort of his socket wrench set, now displayed proudly on his office credenza. The tools that had kept him connected to his craft during the darkest times now served as a reminder of resilience. When I was living behind Morris's yard, he said slowly, I used to read about Matthew's innovative technologies breakthroughs in adaptive technology. Never imagined I'd be part of it. He managed a small smile. Guess sometimes the past doesn't just haunt us. Sometimes it guides us home. Sarah wheeled closer, her expression serious. Mom always says that true innovation comes from understanding both problems and possibilities. Your past isn't just a story, Tom. It's the foundation for everything you're building now. The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, catching the chrome trim on the Bel Air prototype displayed in the lab. Tom thought about James Carlton's Ferrari, about Sarah's Mustang, about Angela Richardson's upcoming wedding. Each car represented more than transportation. They were vessels for carrying dreams forward. Tell James I'll speak, he decided finally, but not just about the technology. People need to understand that adaptation isn't about compromise. It's about finding new ways to keep old promises alive. Catherine's smile held more than professional approval. I'll have my team handle the arrangements. And Tom, maybe it's time to show Jenny that her father didn't just survive. He found his way back to making dreams possible. As if on cue, Tom's phone lit up with a text message. Jenny had sent a photo of her latest project, an electric vehicle charging station powered by solar panels. The caption read, "Different paths, same destination, helping people move forward. Proud of you, Dad." The ghosts of the past, Tom realized, weren't always haunting. Sometimes they were guideposts, leading to places you never knew you needed to find. The warning signs were subtle at first. Small discrepancies in the Billionaire's testing data, slight irregularities in the supply chain for custom parts. Tom might have missed them, if not for habits formed during his years running his own shop. But experience had taught him that in engineering, small problems often masked larger ones. These control module readings don't make sense, he muttered, studying the latest test results in his office. The senator's daughter was scheduled to see the car in 2 weeks, and something felt wrong. "Lisa, can you pull up the original specifications?" His project manager frowned at her tablet. "That's strange. The files have been modified." She tapped through several screens. "Tom, these aren't our original safety protocols. Someone's altered the base code." Before Tom could respond, Catherine burst into the office, her usual composed demeanor shaken. "We have a problem. The board just received an anonymous report claiming our adaptive systems are unsafe. They're citing modified test data and suggesting we've cut corners to meet the wedding deadline." Sarah, who had been testing new control configurations in the lab, wheeled to the office doorway. "That's ridiculous. Tom's systems are more thorough than anything on the market." "It gets worse," Catherine continued, closing the door. "The report specifically mentions Tom's past difficulties, suggests that hiring him was irresponsible, that his time in the salvage yard left him unqualified to handle modern safety systems." Tom felt the familiar cold weight of the past pressing in. His hands found the edge of his desk, grounding himself in its solidity. They're not just attacking the project, they're trying to discredit the entire classic car program. "Bolton Industries," Lisa said suddenly, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "They tried to acquire Matthew's adaptive technology division last year. Catherine turned them down because they wanted to strip our patents and outsource production." Catherine confirmed. "They've been developing their own classic car adaptation program, but they're years behind us." She met Tom's eyes. "Now they're trying to force a crisis of confidence." Tom stood, moving to the window that overlooked the workshop floor. The Billionaire sat in its testing bay, its gleaming form representing not just Angela Richardson's dreams, but the hopes of countless others waiting for their chance at independence. "Show me exactly what they changed," he said quietly, the calm in his voice masking rising anger. Lisa projected the modified code onto the office's main screen, highlighting the alterations. "Clever," Tom acknowledged grimly. "They didn't just change the safety parameters. They modified them to look like deliberately rushed work, made it seem like we were cutting corners to meet the deadline." Sarah had moved closer to examine the code. "But we can prove these aren't your original specifications, right? Show them the real data?" "They thought this through," Catherine said. "The report suggests that any new data we present could be fabricated to cover our tracks. The board is calling an emergency meeting in 2 hours." Tom's mind raced through options, years of problem-solving experience kicking in. "Lisa, when exactly were these files modified?" Checking access logs. "Last Tuesday, between 2 and 4 a.m. A slight smile crossed Tom's face. "Pull up the security footage from the workshop for those hours." The screen filled with video feed, showing Tom working late, testing and refining the Billionaire's systems. "I was here that night, running full safety protocols. The original data should still be in the diagnostic computer's cache." Catherine was already on her phone. "I'll have IT recover it immediately." "But Tom," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "The board may still have concerns about the homeless mechanic they took a chance on," Tom finished. "Maybe it's time they understood exactly what those years in the salvage yard taught me." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Lisa and her team worked to recover the original data, while Sarah helped compile a comprehensive testing history. Catherine made calls, rallying support among key board members. Tom retreated to the workshop floor, seeking clarity among the tools and machines that had always made sense to him. The Bel Air waited patiently, its partially completed systems. A testament to countless hours of careful development. "You're not going to run, are you?" Sarah's voice startled him from his thoughts. She had followed him down, her expression worried. "Because that's what they want, to make you doubt yourself, make you think you don't belong here." Tom ran a hand along the Bel Air's fender, feeling the perfect smoothness that came from properly restored metal. "When your Mustang broke down that night, I could have walked away, kept to my routine, stayed invisible. But there are some things worth fighting for." "Good," Catherine said from behind them. She had changed into her power suit. "Ready for battle? Because I need you in that boardroom, showing them exactly why I hired you. Not despite your past, but because of it." The emergency board meeting hummed with tension. Tom stood before the same people who had approved his hiring, but now their faces showed doubt, concern, even suspicion. "The evidence suggests serious safety compromises," Bolton Industries' representative was saying. "In light of Mr. Walker's unusual background, perhaps it would be prudent to suspend the program pending a full investigation." Tom waited for him to finish, then stepped forward. "You're right about one thing," he said, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "My background is unusual. I've built companies and lost them, known success and failure, lived in a mansion and in a tent." He activated the workshop feed, showing Lisa's team conducting new safety tests. "But those years in the salvage yard taught me something crucial. There's a difference between broken and abandoned. What looks worthless to some people just needs someone who understands its potential." The recovered data appeared on screen, showing the true safety protocols alongside Bolton's modified versions. "These systems aren't just mechanically sound. They're built on understanding what it means to lose something precious and find a new way forward. Every safety check, every redundancy, every fail-safe is designed by someone who knows exactly what's at stake." Sarah wheeled into the boardroom, followed by James Carlton himself, arrived early for his consultation on the project. "Show them," she encouraged. Tom pulled up the video from his late-night testing session. "Watch how each system is tested, retested, refined. This isn't just about meeting safety standards. It's about earning trust. The trust of a father giving his daughter a piece of family history. The trust of everyone who dreams of maintaining their independence." The board chairman leaned forward, studying the evidence. "And Bolton Industries' claims about corner cutting are as fraudulent as their modified data," Catherine interjected smoothly. "Our legal team is already preparing action for corporate espionage and defamation." The tension in the room shifted. Board members exchanged glances, nods. The Bolton representative sat back, his attack transformed into a liability. "There's something else you should see," Tom said quietly. He screened. A video message from Angela Richardson, recorded during her last consultation. Her joy at seeing the Bel Air's progress, her tears when the adaptive controls responded to her touch, the human truth beyond any corporate machinations. When the lights came up, the chairman's decision was clear. "The program continues as planned. Mr. Walker, I believe you have a wedding deadline to meet." Later, in the workshop, Tom found Catherine waiting by the Bel Air. "That could have gone very differently," she said softly. "Maybe once it would have," he agreed, thinking of past defeats. "But some things are worth standing your ground for." Sarah grinned from her wheelchair. Like dreams, Tom confirmed, picking up his wrench. "Now, let's make sure this car is perfect for Angela's big day." The Bel Air's chrome caught the evening light, reflecting not just their images, but the promise of innovations yet to come. Sometimes, Tom realized, the hardest roads led exactly where you needed to go. Evening shadows lengthened across the workshop as Tom and Catherine sat in the Bel Air's front seat, the day's crisis finally behind them. The car's interior was nearly complete, its blend of classic beauty and adaptive technology a testament to perseverance. Sarah had gone home reluctantly, only after extracting a promise that they'd call if anything new developed with the Bolton situation. "You know," Catherine said, running her hand along the custom-built steering controls. "I never told you why I started the Adaptive Technology Division." She paused, collecting thoughts she'd kept private for years. Sarah's father didn't just leave us. He left because he couldn't handle her cerebral palsy diagnosis. Said he hadn't signed up for a lifetime of modifications. Tom turned to her, seeing not the powerful CEO, but a mother who'd faced her own battles. The evening light caught the subtle silver in her hair, earned through years of fighting for her daughter's future. "That's when I realized," she continued, "that adaptation isn't about overcoming limitations. It's about refusing to let anyone else define what's possible. Every time someone said Sarah would have to give up her dreams, we found a way to prove them wrong. Like this car," Tom said softly, understanding flowing between them. "It's not just transportation, it's a statement." Catherine nodded, her professional facade softening. "When Bolton Industries tried to buy us out last year, they saw patents and profit margins. They didn't understand that what we're really building here is independence, hope, the right to choose your own path." The workshop felt intimate in the gathering dusk, the Bel Air cocooning them in its restored elegance. Through the windshield, they could see Lisa's team working late, strengthening their security protocols against future attacks. "The board meeting today," Catherine said, turning to face him directly. "You didn't just defend your work. You showed them why you're exactly who we need leading this program. Your time in the salvage yard, rebuilding engines and rebuilding yourself, it wasn't a detour. It was preparation." Tom thought about Morris, about the quiet dignity of keeping faith with your craft, even when the world had turned its back. "You took a huge risk hiring me," he acknowledged. "Today could have gone very differently. The biggest risks," Catherine smiled, "often bring the greatest rewards. Speaking of which," she pulled out her phone, showing him a message. "The Classic Car Accessibility Foundation wants to partner with us. James Carlton was impressed by how you handled the crisis. Says it proves you understand both the mechanical and human elements of what we're doing. The implications were enormous. Funding, resources, a network of enthusiasts and experts all working toward the same goal." Tom felt possibilities expanding, like the horizon at dawn. "There's more," Catherine continued. "Sarah's been talking to Angela Richardson. They want to start a youth mentorship program, teaching other disabled teens about automotive engineering. They're calling it Adaptive Dreams." Tom smiled, remembering teaching Jenny, then Sarah, watching their confidence grow with each learned skill. From one broken-down Mustang to a whole movement. Emily would have loved that. The mention of his late wife didn't bring the usual sharp pain. Instead, he felt a gentle warmth, as if her memory was blessing this new chapter. Catherine's hand found his in the gathering darkness, the touch both professional and personal, like so many things between them now. Sometimes the best innovations come from understanding what's broken, in machines and in people. You taught me that, Tom Walker. Through the Bel Air's windshield, they watched the city lights begin to twinkle. Somewhere out there, Angela Richardson was counting days until her wedding. Sarah was probably texting Jenny about their shared interests in adaptive engineering, and Morris was closing up his salvage yard, proud of the man who'd found his way back to purpose. "Tomorrow's going to be busy," Tom said finally, reluctant to break the moment but aware of all that lay ahead. "We need to strengthen our security, update the project timeline, prepare for the foundation partnership. Tomorrow," Catherine agreed, her hand still in his. "We'll change the world, one classic car at a time. But right now I think we've earned a moment to appreciate how far we've come." The Bel Air embraced them in its restored elegance, a testament to second chances and the courage to stand your ground when it matters most. Sometimes, Tom realized, the greatest victories aren't just about proving others wrong, they're about proving yourself right. The morning of the Bel Air's presentation dawned clear and bright. Tom stood in Matthews Innovative Technologies' main showroom, watching his team make final adjustments to the display. The car gleamed under specialized lighting. Its tropical, turquoise paint and pristine chrome, telling no tales of the battles fought to bring it to this moment. Everything's perfect, Sarah assured him, wheeling around the car for a final inspection. She'd insisted on being there early, wearing a dress that matched the Bel Air's interior. Angela's going to cry when she sees it. Happy tears, she added, with a grin. The showroom filled quickly with press, industry leaders, and classic car enthusiasts. James Carlton arrived with other Foundation board members, while Lisa proudly guided tech reporters through the engineering specifications. Senator Richardson stood quietly to one side, his eyes never leaving the car that represented so much more than just a wedding gift. Catherine joined Tom by the podium, elegant in her business attire, but with an excited gleam in her eyes that matched Sarah's. "Ready to make history," she whispered. Before Tom could respond, a familiar figure slipped through the crowd. Jenny, looking so much like Emily, it made his heart catch. But with her own confident stride and an environmental engineering badge from her California firm pinned to her lapel. "Dad," she said simply, and wrapped him in a hug that bridged years of distance. "Sarah's been keeping me updated. You've built something amazing here." The crowd hushed as Angela Richardson arrived, her wheelchair guided by her fiancé. She'd been told only that Matthew's Innovative Technologies wanted to showcase new, adaptive technology. The moment she saw her father's Bel Air, her hands flew to her mouth. "The car's transformation mirrors our own journey," Tom began his presentation, his voice steady with conviction. "Like many of us, it faced challenges that might have ended its story. Instead, those challenges became an opportunity to redefine what's possible." He guided Angela to the driver's door, which opened with elegant precision. The custom transfer system, designed to match the car's vintage aesthetic, moved with whisper-smooth efficiency. Within moments, she was behind the wheel, her hands resting on controls that looked completely stock but responded to the slightest touch. "Start it," Tom encouraged softly. The Bel Air's engine came to life with a gentle rumble. Angela's tears flowed freely as she operated the adaptive controls, each response perfectly calibrated to her abilities. Her father stepped forward, placing a hand on the car's roof. When Angela was injured, the senator's voice carried emotion. "He didn't try to hide. I thought this car would just become a reminder of dreams we'd lost. Instead, it's become a bridge to new ones." Cameras flashed as Angela tested each system. Jenny stood with Sarah, their heads together, as they discussed the environmental aspects of the adaptive technology. Catherine handled questions from the press with practiced ease, but her eyes kept finding Tom's, sharing this triumph. "The Classic Car Accessibility Foundation," James Carlton announced, "is proud to partner with Matthew's Innovative Technologies in making this program available nationwide. Every vintage car enthusiast deserves the chance to keep their passion alive." The presentation concluded with Angela driving the Bel Air smoothly across the showroom floor, her father in the passenger seat. The crowd's applause wasn't just for the technology, it was for the hope this project represented. "You did it, Tom," Catherine said later as the crowd mingled and Angela gave delighted tours of her car's features. "You took a senator's dream for his daughter and turned it into a movement." Tom watched Jenny and Sarah deep in discussion with Lisa about future projects. "We did it," he corrected. "All of us. Sometimes it takes a whole team to prove that nothing's really broken if you understand its purpose." The Bel Air stood as a gleaming testament to second chances, for cars, for dreams, for people who refuse to let circumstances define their limits. In its restored beauty, Tom saw reflections of every battle won, every doubt overcome, every bridge rebuilt. "Ready for what comes next?" Catherine asked, her hand finding his as naturally as gears meshing in a finely tuned engine. Through the showroom windows, morning sunlight painted the city in shades of promise. Tom thought of his socket wrench set, now mounted proudly in his office, and of Morris's salvage yard, where this journey had begun. "Ready," he said, and knew it was true. Sometimes the best restorations aren't just about fixing what's broken, they're about discovering what's possible when you refuse to give up on dreams. 1 month after the Billionaire's unveiling, Tom stood before a different kind of gathering in Matthew's Innovative Technologies conference room. The space had been transformed into a workshop, with teenagers in wheelchairs clustered around classic car components, learning the basics of adaptive engineering. The throttle control system is like a conversation between you and the car, he explained, watching Sarah demonstrate the principles to her eager students. Our job is to make sure both sides understand each other perfectly. The adaptive dreams youth program had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as Sarah and Angela's idea had blossomed into a full-fledged movement, with participants from across the country. Today's class was specifically focused on girls interested in engineering careers. Catherine entered quietly, pausing to watch a young participant successfully wire an adaptive control circuit. The pride in the girl's eyes reminded her of Sarah's first achievements. "The foundation paperwork came through this morning," she told Tom softly. "We're officially a non-profit organization. The Matthews Walker Foundation for Adaptive Innovation." The name had been Sarah's idea, insisting that both families' legacies should be recognized. The organization would fund not just car adaptations, but education, research, and mentorship programs. Jenny, who had relocated to Dallas to head the foundation's environmental initiatives, was working with Lisa's team to develop sustainable practices for classic car adaptations. "We're not just preserving automotive history," she'd explained to the board. "We're making it viable for future generations." "Dad," she called now from her workstation, "come look at what Maria designed." She gestured to a teenager whose adaptive steering system showed remarkable innovation. "Reminds me of someone else who used to think outside the box." Tom studied Maria's work, recognizing the same spark of determination he'd seen in Sarah that first night at the salvage yard. "You've considered the mechanical advantage perfectly," he praised. "Want to help us test it in the simulator?" Maria's face lit up. "Really? But this is just a rough design." "Every breakthrough starts somewhere," Catherine interjected, having joined them quietly. Tom's first adaptive system was sketched on the back of a repair manual. Now it's helping people across the country. The conference room buzzed with energy as students shared ideas, veterans of the program mentored newcomers, and dreams took technical shape. Through the windows, they could see the Foundation's first official project, a 1965 Corvette being modified for a paralyzed Vietnam veteran. "Morris called," Catherine mentioned as they watched the students work. "Says his salvage yard is becoming quite the tourist attraction. Apparently, people want to see where the homeless mechanic story began." Tom smiled, remembering his tent among the rusted cars. "Maybe we should set up a scholarship fund, help other mechanics who've hit hard times but haven't lost their skills." "Already in progress," Sarah announced, wheeling up with a tablet displaying the program details. "The Morris Salvage Scholarship for Automotive Innovation. Full training in adaptive technologies for mechanics who need a second chance." Tom felt emotion tighten his throat. Every day, it seemed, the ripples from that one night of kindness spread further. The foundation wasn't just about cars anymore, it was about recognizing potential in people and places others might overlook. "We've got 10 more classic cars lined up for adaptation," Jenny reported, joining their small group. "And the environmental team has developed a way to make the conversions even more energy efficient. We're not just changing lives, we're changing the industry." Catherine's hand found Tom's, a gesture that had become natural over the weeks since the Billionaire presentation. "Speaking of change," she said with a smile, "the board wants to expand the program internationally. Apparently there's a prince in Dubai with a collection of classics he wants adapted." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, catching the eager faces of young engineers in training, reflecting off adaptive devices that represented freedom and independence. Tom thought about Emily, about how she would have loved seeing their daughter helping lead this movement. Sometimes he said, watching Maria successfully complete her control circuit. The best legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we help others build for themselves. Sarah grinned up at them. Speaking of building things, Angela's wedding is next week. Wait until everyone sees her drive up in that Billionaire. The foundation's logo, a classic car silhouette, merged with universal accessibility symbols hung proudly on the wall, representing not just what they'd accomplished, but what was still possible. In the workshop below, the Corvette's engine roared to life, testing its new adaptive systems, while upstairs, the next generation of innovative engineers learned to turn limitations into launching points. "Ready for tomorrow's board meeting?" Catherine asked. "We're presenting the 5-year expansion plan." Tom looked around the room, full of dreams taking shape, at his daughter sharing her expertise, at Sarah mentoring young engineers, at the future unfolding in ways he could never have imagined that night in the salvage yard. "Ready," he said, and knew that this time it wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about building something that would last. The evening sun cast long shadows across Morris Auto Salvage, painting the old cars in shades of gold and promise. Tom stood where his tent had once been, Sarah and Catherine beside him, while Morris leaned against a freshly painted sign, Morris Walker Center for Adaptive Automotive Training. "Still can't believe you talked me into this," Morris grumbled, but his eyes shone with pride as he surveyed the transformed yard. The old workshop had been expanded, equipped with state-of-the-art tools and lifts. Solar panels, Jenny's contribution, gleamed on the roof, while the lot had been reorganized into a practical training ground. "This is where it all started," Sarah reminded him, her wheelchair humming softly on the newly paved paths between carefully preserved classic cars. "Where else would we put the Foundation's first training center, the first class of Morris Salvage?" Scholars would arrive next week, mechanics who'd fallen on hard times but showed promise in adaptive technology. Tom's old tent site had become a memorial garden with a simple plaque reading, "Where Dreams Get Fixed." "Remember that first night?" Catherine asked softly, her hand finding Tom's. "Sarah's Mustang broken down, you working by floodlight, me watching from the Tesla and doing background checks on my phone." Tom smiled, remembering. Never imagined a broken timing belt would lead to all this. He gestured to the facility, where Lisa was directing the installation of the final training equipment. The workshop's walls were lined with photographs. The Billionaire at Angela's wedding, Sarah teaching her first adaptive engineering class, Jenny presenting their environmental initiatives at a global conference. Morris shuffled his feet, uncomfortable, with emotion but needing to speak. "Known you were special since that first day, Tom. Way you treated those broken-down cars, like they all had stories worth saving." "Guess they did, in the end." A familiar rumble approached, and they turned to see Angela Richardson pulling in, driving her Billionaire with practiced ease. Behind her, a convoy of classic cars arrived, each one adapted by their program, each carrying someone whose dreams had been restored, along with their vehicles. "The documentary crew's ready," Jenny called from the workshop entrance. The Foundation's story had caught the attention of a major streaming service. From Salvage to Salvation would tell not just Tom's journey, but the stories of everyone whose lives had been changed by their work. "Got something to show you first," Morris said gruffly. He led them to a covered shape behind the workshop. With a flourish unusual for the old man, he pulled back the tarp to reveal a 1957 Chevy pickup, restored to pristine condition. "Found her under a pile of parts when we were clearing the lot. Thought she'd make a good company truck." Tom ran his hand along the pickup's flawless paint, recognizing the thousands of hours of work Morris had poured into the restoration. The truck wore the Foundation's logo proudly on its doors, along with a smaller decal. "Every dream deserves a second chance." "It's perfect," Catherine declared, already seeing possibilities. "We can use it for promotional events, show people that our commitment to preservation goes beyond just adapting cars." Sarah wheeled closer to examine the truck. The bench seats already modified for adaptive controls, she noticed. Morris, you've been holding out on us. You're better at this than you let on. The old man shrugged, but his pleasure was evident. Picked up a few things, watching you all work. Besides, figured if we're teaching people here, the old place should have something special to show what's possible. Tom thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a homeless mechanic to the leader of a movement that was changing lives. The salvage yard had been his refuge when he'd lost everything, and now it would be a refuge for others needing a second chance. You know, he said, looking at Catherine, there's something else this place would be perfect for. She raised an eyebrow, but her smile suggested she knew what was coming. Garden needs a proper centerpiece, he continued. Maybe something permanent. Something about two people who found each other because of a broken-down Mustang and a dream that needed fixing. Catherine's eyes softened. Are you suggesting we get married in a salvage yard? Not just any salvage yard, Sarah interjected excitedly. The place where everything changed, where dreams get fixed. Morris cleared his throat. Already talked to the permit office. Gardens approved for small ceremonies. Just saying. The evening light painted everything in shades of possibility. Around them, the salvage yard had transformed. From a place of endings into a beginning. For broken-down cars, for struggling mechanics, for dreams that refused to die. What do you say? Tom asked Catherine softly. Ready to make it official. Her answer was in her eyes before she spoke, bright with the same vision that had seen possibility in a homeless mechanic that night so many months ago. I think, she said, this is exactly where our next chapter should start. 1 year later, the Matthews Walker Foundation celebrated its first anniversary in the garden, where Tom and Catherine had exchanged vows. The salvage yard bloomed with roses climbing over restored classic cars, while graduates of the Morris Salvage Scholarship program demonstrated their latest adaptive innovations to an international audience. Sarah, now heading the youth education program while finishing her engineering degree, led tours of the facility in her Mustang, the car that had started it all. Jenny had relocated permanently to Dallas, her environmental engineering team revolutionizing sustainable practices in classic car adaptation. Even Morris had embraced his role as mentor, his gruff wisdom guiding new generations of mechanics toward their dreams. The foundation's success had exceeded their wildest expectations. Hundreds of classic cars had been adapted, each representing a story of restored independence. The waiting list grew daily, but so did their capacity to help, with satellite centers opening across the country. Tom and Catherine stood together near the plaque marking his old tent site, watching their extended family of dreamers and innovators celebrate. Their wedding rings caught the sunlight, simple bands engraved with timing gear patterns, a reminder of the night that had brought them together. Ready for the next chapter? Catherine asked, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. There. Newest project due in 6 months. Tom smiled, thinking of all the dreams yet to be fixed, all the stories yet to be restored. With this family, he said, watching Sarah demonstrate adaptive controls to an eager young student. Always above them, the sign gleamed, where dreams get fixed, and every day they proved it true. On graduation day, Sarah drove her Mustang to the podium to receive her engineering degree, its engine purring as sweetly as the night Tom had first fixed it. In the audience, 3 generations of dreamers watched with pride. Morris, Tom, and Catherine, with their infant daughter Emily, and Angela Richardson, whose Bel Air had inspired hundreds of similar transformations. The Matthews Walker Foundation had become a global movement, but its heart remained in a salvage yard where broken things found new purpose. Every morning, Tom still carried his old socket wrench set, now mounted in a custom display case in the training center's entrance, a reminder that the tools that fix dreams come in many forms. Jenny had married one of the foundation's environmental engineers, their shared passion for sustainable technology spawning innovations that reached far beyond adaptive vehicles. She and Tom spoke daily now, their relationship restored like the classics they loved to save. As Sarah's valedictory speech ended, she gestured to the row of adapted classic cars lining the ceremony grounds, each representing a student who'd refused to let circumstances define their limits. Sometimes, she said, smiling at her family, the best mechanics don't just fix cars, they restore possibilities. Catherine squeezed Tom's hand as baby Emily cooed in her carrier. Above them, a banner caught the breeze. Every dream deserves a second chance. In the salvage yard turned training center, another class of Morris scholars was learning to make that promise real, one restoration at a time. Some things, once fixed, stay fixed forever, especially when what's being restored is hope itself.